Welcome to the Hail Mary, the GPP NFL podcast. I'm Big Italy 42 here talking about some options for you for your tournaments for this week via Scott Mailwig at Sports 25 to Life, as I'm sure you know him by now. So he wrote this article. I'm going to highlight some of his top plays, and first one being Andrew Luck of the Colts. And he mentions here it's going to be really hard to find someone with his sort of upside and, well, consistency aside from the past few weeks at his at this ownership level. It's a guy who had some garbage time the last 2 weeks, but the team overall has struggled. It's a must-win situation against the Titans this week, and you got to expect that Andrew Luck is going to come out firing in this one and get back on track, because Colts certainly can't afford to go to 0-3, certainly can't afford to lose to Tennessee. Close spread in this one, 3 points too, 46-point total. Not a lot of gaudy totals like we've seen the last few weeks, so 46, not a bad total for him. And you're going to be looking at this one here, and Scott mentions we saw last year, Luck struggled the first two games and then had a huge week 3. Obviously, that's somewhat anecdotal, but it's a play you don't feel good about because he hasn't played well and his price is still expensive, but going to be much lower owned this week than he probably will be again the rest of the season. So that's a great call for you there. A guy with monster upside at a low ownership price. Certainly want to take advantage of something like that. Next up, looking at Nick Foles, another guy with big upside, facing off against the Steelers, who are putting up a ton of points, but they're also giving up a ton of points. That secondary is a mess, and Nick Foles is going to be airing it out here in a what's supposed to be a shootout. I mean, this game's listed as a pick'em right now. It's got a decent-sized total, too, 48 points, the highest one on the week. So, second highest behind Green Bay and Kansas City. But this is going to be a game where they're going to have to be throwing the ball, because I don't imagine the Rams, their front seven has been good. Overall defense has not been great. You got Antonio Brown, now you got Le'Veon Bell to worry about. Heath Miller's been fine. Ben Roethlisberger is just firing away and putting up a ton of points. So they're going to have to score points to compete in this one. You imagine they'll be giving up plenty. So certainly Nick Foles at his price tag is going to be a guy you need to be considering for your GPPs, because he's so cheap. And it's a pick 'em. So, I mean, if this game stays close, he's going to be throwing the ball 35, 40 times. And you got to imagine that he could pay out that salary if he finds the end zone a few times. Next up, Jamal Charles of the Chiefs against Green Bay. I mentioned that 49-point team total here. This is your Monday night game. And this is another recency bias type of play, because we saw Marshawn Lynch really let everyone down, myself included, last week against the Packers, who were horrible against the run in week 1. This is still not a very good run defense. Jamal Charles, though, a much bigger part of the passing game than Marshawn Lynch is in Seattle. So he's certainly a guy that has big-time upside. He's got a nice floor because he catches passes, especially full PPR like DraftKings. And he's a guy that, we've seen he can put up huge numbers without having, 25 touches. So he's effective with the touches he gets. He's the biggest focal point of that offense. And that's a really good call, because he's a guy that, he is an elite talent, but he's not priced like an elite talent this week, and it's a great matchup for him, so that's certainly a great option. Next up, he's got Latavius Murray for the Raiders. This is a guy who I've seen some people talking about this week. Not a guy you're probably playing in any of your cash games or anything like that, but definitely a guy who is facing off against a Cleveland defense that has not been a good run defense. Been one of the worst in football over the past few years. It's a good matchup here. Oakland looked great last week on offense, scoring points at will, and Latavius Murray obviously going to help find some balance there with Derek Carr and company. So you got to expect that this one should be close, 3.5-point spread, 43-point total. I mean, you're never going to see a huge total with Oakland and Cleveland anytime soon, but certainly Lat Murray is a guy that's going to see quite a bit of volume. So with so many other value running backs or potential value running backs due to some injury situations, I think he's a great call there. A guy that I personally love. I love his price tag. I love his potential. And I'm on board with this one. This is a guy that I'd really like in all formats. Demaryius Thomas for the Broncos. Going up against Detroit. The Detroit defense has looked absolutely lost over the first 2 weeks. They just aren't pressuring the quarterback as much as they used to. And, I mean, they're just not making plays. That secondary is just, it's awful right now. And Peyton Manning, after the first week, everyone's speculating once again, this was the beginning of the end. He's terrible, blah, blah, blah. But he had a good week last week, and Demaryius Thomas is a guy who's a deep threat. He gets involved in the short passing game. He's a threat to take it to the house at all times. He gets a ton of targets, and in this matchup here, he's got a nice big projection here at the F Cafe and and for the lineup optimizer here, and the Lions allowing 34 points a game. So this is a great matchup for Demaryius Thomas. Got some huge upside in this one. Maybe could take a couple to the house. And I'm not a believer that Peyton Manning's done yet. Maybe you are. Either way, doesn't have to throw the ball that far to get a wide receiver screen to Demaryius Thomas and let him do the rest. So I like that call. Another recency bias type of pick here. Jordan Matthews for the Eagles. This is a guy that we all thought had burned us last week. Final few minutes of the game. I think it was the final 1 minute of the game. Scored that last touchdown and bailed us out. He didn't have a single catch in the first 3 quarters. I believe he ended up with 6. All of them in the fourth quarter. Most of them on that final drive. Got in the end zone, and by got in the end zone, we mean he caught the ball at the 1 and stretched it over the goal line. Barely. But we got the touchdown. That's all that matters now. I think a lot of people will be off him. He was a popular cash game play last week. Certainly won't be that this week. But once again, everyone's looking at Antonio Brown, and they're looking at Julio Jones, and they're looking at value plays. You got Larry Fitzgerald going to be a popular play, Dante Moncrief, guys like that. So he's going to fly under the radar here this week. No pun intended. But I think he's a great option. He does have big-time upside, and this is a Jets secondary that isn't a great one. And we also saw Darrelle Revis listed as questionable, so if Darrelle Revis sits out this one, then this could certainly be a great matchup for him. And then moving on to the next guy, John Brown. Like I said, Larry Fitzgerald going to be a popular play, and rightfully so, coming off a 3-touchdown game last week. But if you want to swerve, this is a guy, John Brown, who is drawing a ton of pass interference calls down the field. So it seems like he's not producing, but what he's doing is he's moving the ball without having to catch the ball, because we saw last week, wide open, streaking for a touchdown. Defender just tackled him because you just know you don't want to give up that touchdown. I mean, that's what a lot of guys are coached to do. It's a smart play. It's a savvy move, but that's a play where he got open, and it would have been an easy touchdown. But this is a guy that's certainly contributing. One of these games, he's going to have a huge breakout performance, and this would be the perfect week to swerve off of Larry Fitzgerald to John Brown and get yourself some lower ownership and still some upside there. And that pass-first attack for the Cardinals, and that 49er secondary, another one that's just looked god-awful. Ben Roethlisberger picked them apart the entire week last week. And, I mean, the front seven doesn't look too great either. So this is a defense that they are the 49ers in name alone. This is certainly not a defense that you're afraid of. And Carson Palmer's looked great as well. Next up, this is a guy who's going to step into a bigger role due to injury. And that's Coby Fleener against Tennessee Titans this week. Obviously, Dwayne Allen, looks like he's going to be out with an injury here this week. So Coby Fleener going to step back in. And as we know, he was Andrew Luck's go-to tight ends at Stanford back in the day, a few years back. They've had a couple big performances together. Obviously, Dwayne Allen, I think the more gifted, the more talented, the more involved tight end. But obviously, he's going to be out. Coby Fleener's going to step into a bigger role. Like I said, Andrew Luck and the Colts have to win this game. It's a division game. They're 0-2. Can't lose this game. So you got to imagine he's going to get him involved. Obviously, T.Y. Hilton, Dante Moncrief involved there as well. Running game really hasn't gotten going, so if the running game struggles again, expect maybe even a higher workload for a guy like Coby Fleener. And that's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out the rest of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.